In 2009, Quinnipiac University asked me to teach the most unpopular course in their graduate interactive program, the writing course. The web students rejected writing because they believed at the time that books and bibliographies and literature were obsolete. This was a particular moment in the evolution of us and the internet because the financial collapse had just occurred. The Amazon Kindle had just appeared and appeared to threaten the entire publishing industry. Just the focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, suggested to many people that the humanities were dying. Now, as a good writer, I stuck to my convictions, but I also listened to my audience. And I tried to speak in their language. I took the course online, and I used the metaphors and the forms of the web to convince them that writing was still essential. For an example, I used Twitter to teach them better sentence writing. Now, I know how we all feel about Twitter right now, but this was in the beginning. And at its most basic, it's a limitation. 280 characters per tweet. Back then, it was 140 characters. And it would force the students to edit. And if I reminded them that they had to remain articulate for their classmates and for the wider audience, they would learn to write. And they would learn to communicate better online. Now, taking the course online also introduced it to a whole other hostile audience. My former colleagues, veteran reporters and producers who were coming back to school to learn about the web that had halted many of their careers. And then I realized all I had to do was turn the course on its head again and use the web metaphors, the writing metaphors that they understood, to teach them about the web metaphors. I could use their love of a good sentence and a good journalistic lead to help them understand the possibilities of Twitter and also help them get past the idea that the web was their enemy. And soon we had this great online conversation, cross-generational, cross-skill level, cross different types of skills. And this was all in writing online. And many of the students who didn't like the course from both audiences now loved it. Let me give you a larger example. In the fourth week of what I call the interactive voice, I ask students to pick out an argument that they feel passionate about. And then I tell them to pick the opposite side and play devil's advocate with themselves. Now, the devil's advocate, if you don't know, was an actual job position in the Vatican in Rome. Someone would speak against the candidates for sainthood. It's a job position that I think disappeared in the last century, and I hear the canonization process is moving along quite nicely. But the phrase is stuck. The phrase is stuck. The lawyer, the devil's advocate at the Vatican was a lawyer. And all lawyers use the devil's advocate process to prepare their arguments. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, corporation counsel, they use the devil's advocate to prepare their witnesses and their clients for the stand, to think about what's in the mind of the opposite bench, to imagine the counter-arguments that they will face in their next battle for the truth. I use the devil's advocate as a writing assignment because all writing is argument. Whether you're writing an op-ed that you're passionate about, whether you're submitting a scientific paper, whether you are creating a piece of fiction and have to convince the audience that it's a relevant reflection of reality. It's all argument. And if you really want to write well, you have to anticipate the many ways in which the audience is going to counter your ability to reach them. Now, and that's really what I did with the class. I recreated it for each new audience, and that's what made it successful. Now, the devil's advocate is my favorite assignment. A lot of the assignments are teaching to form. You know, how do you write a good resume? How do you write a good tweet? But this assignment is about how to write. If it's open-ended, so it's really up to the student to realize through their imagination what they can do with it. The most basic thing I get from students are the disclaimers. Even though we're working behind pseudonyms, digital avatars, pen names that protect all of their privacy, I still get these warnings from each of them, these elaborate italicized paragraphs at the beginning of their blog posts. To whom it may concern, do not associate any of the following ideas or words with me. This is just a college course assignment for a strange professor who wants us to take the voice of people who are against all that is good, relevant, and or holy. Clearly, I'd hit a nerve. But the assignment doesn't just work in that way. Many other students will approach their own empathy. They will actually try to put themselves in the shoes of another person. I always get a debate team captain or two who do the assignment so well, they put themselves in the minds of the enemy so well that the rest of the class thinks they didn't understand the assignment. And then, if I'm lucky, every second semester, I get the example. The kid who will who will identify that passionate issue, who will research the opposition and really try and get into that mindset. And then they will find the issue far more complicated. These are the students that I teach for. If they can get into that mindset, sometimes they will even try and navigate a third way through that polarization. And this is really what good writing does. It always discovers, not just in the research, but in the process of writing, in connecting those words and connecting those ideas. It's that kind of writing that a good writer will preserve in the writing process so that we go through that discovery too. And then writing becomes the preservation of knowledge. There's one student that I had that I was just so surprised by her frankness that she was learning and that she had changed her mind. And she said at one point, I've never challenged myself in this way before. And you have to ask, how often are we asked to challenge ourselves in that way? How often do we take the opportunity when we get it? It's the rare student who takes the assignment all the way, and it's the rare individual amongst all of us who will admit to changing rather than wanting to create change in everyone else. Now, since I started teaching the course, the online discussion has not improved. And many of the people who could probably use the devil's advocate assignment would benefit from the devil's advocate assignment could have exploited and damaged how we think about the social media formats that I've used to teach good communication. Internet trolls are actually not named for the monster under the bridge. They are named for the fishing process, where you troll the bottom of the ocean trying to catch something. The moniker troll was actually very much like the word hacker, originally a term amongst the early internet culture that was positive, and it became negative in the mouths of the internet skeptical. A good internet troll would do exactly what my assignment does, according to their definition. A good internet troll would try to go out into the general public and catch the person who needs to be awake from the one way to see things, from their one solution. The internet troll is the jester to the king. In the medieval times, the clown of the court would speak to royalty and say things that would get anyone else killed through the art of comedy. In King Lear, we have the wise fool who balances out the blind, literally and figuratively, the blind king. And as I make these comparisons in class, as I think about the devil's advocate and I think about trolling, I realize it's American to troll. The checks and balances system that the founders created was meant to take the polarized individuals and bring them to compromise, and also to give voice to those marginal ideas, the marginal ideas that founded the country. We should be, as Americans, more conscious of how easy it is to get wrapped up in us versus them. The idea that you should wake the self when you want to wake everyone else around you is as old as Plato's Know Thyself. And to question authority, you really have to begin with questioning your own authority. Troll thyself. There was a student that I had a few months ago. It was a workshop with retirees, and he was a 70-year-old modern artist, guy who had worked in the mid-last century with some of the greats. And he said to me, "You're just talking about the artistic process. You're talking about the internal editor." Right on the nose. I don't teach counter-arguments and trolling and comedy because they're the things we see on the web. I teach them because they are the oldest lesson of writing and art. The great writers, the great authors, they are relentless in the judgment of themselves and their ideas and their work. That's who creates the great work. The writers who approach the paradoxes of our lives are the ones who write the fiction and nonfiction and art that grasps and occasionally changes the world. In other words, if you know thine enemy, then you still have some homework to do. Thank you.